Back in the olden days, like 20 to 30 odd years ago, there were loads of random celebrities who were programming their own video games. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker on the Sega Master System, 50 Cent Bulletproof for the PS2, and Carol Vorderman's Sudoku DVD game, yeah they used to be a thing, are some prime examples of this. I mean, if it's their face on the front, that must mean they made it themselves, right? I can just imagine 50 Cent at home working on level designs. Anyway, racing drivers were also doing it. I've previously reviewed these iconic games featuring Jacques Villeneuve, Aguri Suzuki, and, of course, Nigel Mansell. It's fair to say their game creation skills weren't as good as their driving abilities, but they provided some fun moments. But what happens when one of the greatest F1 drivers of all time decides to showcase his programming skills? Surely that one's going to be a belter. So let's jump into Nicholas Latifi's Racing Masterclass! Okay, no, it's not him. Let me instead introduce you to Michael Schumacher Racing World Kart 2002. I mean, he's already let himself down with the name of it, and this weird animated shoey in the intro, but we shall move past those and find out if the game itself is any good. As some of the more astute of you may have figured out, this game is based on karting, and was released in 2002. This is the PS1 version, and it was available on the PC as well. Surprisingly, Michael didn't bother releasing it on the PS2, despite that having been out for about 2 years at this point. Which means you get some proper old school PS1 graphics. Look at the state of that driver. I've seen rounder looking characters in Minecraft. The scenery around the tracks too is just dreadful. Everything's so flat and pixelated. It's like those really early 3D games from the mid-90s when no one had figured out what they were doing yet. Well, Michael still hadn't worked it out in 2002. Let's pause here for a moment and analyse what we're looking at. First, the texturing on the walls is hilarious, and they're clipping through the barrier. Second, the barriers themselves seem to be floating in mid-air. And third, I don't know what's supposed to be going on in the ceiling. My guess is that they're skylights and it's night time. Maybe? Or perhaps it's a portal to another dimension, where go-karts have become sentient and taken over the world. Now that would be an interesting game. There's also issues with rendering, such as this barrier that magically grows as you drive towards it. Or worse still, the enormous aircraft hangar that suddenly plops into view. As they do. I guess it didn't want to hang around. I did enjoy this one though, where there's a kart racing through the roof above you. It just goes to show when you're starting off in motorsport, the sky's the limit. Okay, we've established that graphically this isn't the greatest racing game ever made, but maybe Michael's focused on the gameplay, so let's look at that now. We're going to go through the different championship modes. There's 3 to choose from: Fun, ICA and FSA. Apparently only the first one is fun, the others must be really tedious. Anyway, they get progressively harder as you go along, and to unlock them, you have to earn enough points from the previous one. The Fun League is relatively straightforward. These are only 3 laps, and I was able to blast through them quite quickly. In terms of the controls, there's not much to worry about. X to accelerate, square to brake, left and right to go left and right. To be honest, you don't even need to brake much, just coast around the corners. And that's good. The controls should be simple, because karting is supposed to be simple. Forward, stop, turn, that should be it. No need for DRS or wing levels or changing a differential setup here. There's only 3 races in the fun class, and as I've just earned my 3rd win, we can progress to the slightly bigger leagues. We're up to 4 laps now, and there's a few more tracks to try. I'm 98.7% sure they're all made up, but I've said that before about a game, and it turned out I was racing at Daytona and didn't realise, so what do I know? Again, these ones aren't too difficult either. However, for me it did seem to depend a lot on the circuit, just how dominant I was going to be. For instance, the Isle of Man track was pretty simple, and I won that by about 8 years. The Austrian track with the giant roundabout in it was a bit tougher, mainly because I made a bit of a boo-boo on lap 3. But this twisty layout in the American desert was a nightmare. It's just corner after corner. I never knew where I was going next. I was only a lowly 3rd in this one. I can't even blame the kart for that. The handling has been pretty decent to get on with. It took me a few races early on to properly get the hang of it, but overall it's solid and a lot better than many other games of this era that I've played. However, the most challenging aspect of this game for me doesn't come from how the kart handles or the difficulty of the tracks. No, it's the AI, and I don't mean their speed. I'm going to make a bold claim and say that Michael Schumacher Racing World Kart 2002 has the most aggressive AI drivers I have ever come across. These guys have absolutely no mercy. They are constantly ramming you, trying to cut you up, and just plain force you into the grass. They don't even care if it slows themselves down, just as long as they're taking you out in the process. Total savages. It's not even just a player they're doing it to, they deploy the same tactics against each other. It makes trying to fight your way through the grid a real challenge, because you can lose so much time battling to get past. If you can clear them early, and cleanly, you can probably bugger off up the road and win by half a lap. Start fighting them, however, and you can end up miles behind while one of them storms off at the front instead. But should we be surprised? Let's be honest, Schumacher used to drive a bit like this himself from time to time, so it fits with the brand. And speaking of the big man, you may have noticed he's not actually appeared in his own game yet. Well, that's about to change, because once you've unlocked the top tier, he joins the grid. Yep, you get to go up against a 7-time F1 champ. Well, it only won 4 at the time this game was released, but it's still pretty cool. The difficulty definitely ramps up a bit here. The first race I did, I ended up last, although again it was another squiggly track that I struggled to get to grips with. Weirdly, Shuey was only 5th. I thought he'd have programmed himself to boss every race. I do eventually manage to pick up a couple of victories in this class, but with the twisty layouts and the murderous AI, it's going to be tough to collect enough points to, well, I don't know what happens after this one. Not very much probably, there's nothing left to unlock. As it turns out, all you get is this crappy podium graphic. Yay, you win! I can't even be bothered to try and earn that magnificent achievement for myself, so let's leave it here. So Michael, you definitely showed promise as a game designer. The gameplay was fun and simple to get used to, and the tracks are imaginative. The graphics were horrendous, even for the PS1, although to be fair, it does look a lot better on the PC. But it's the thuggish AI that will be my lasting memory of this game. What a bunch of dangerous lunatics. And you know what? For that reason alone, this is worth playing. Because this isn't racing, it's a survival game.